I think we're called, haven't we? Put people in there. We are. Just a nice gentle reminder, because of we're going to slightly overrun, but we need to finish as close as possible to 12 o'clock. That's right. Because obviously other people's diaries, commitments. Warm welcome to Carolyn and colleagues. Good to see you. We're going to go straight into the National Staff Survey report. So, Ali, over to you first.
Yeah, I'm going to hand across to Carolyn, who's our Head of Culture, Inclusion and Organisational Development. She's shadowed today by Natalie, who's done an awful lot of work on the staff survey itself and the actions that we're putting into place as a result of it. And I think context-wise, just really important to recognise the conversation that we've just had in terms of expectation management, the amount of change that's been happening. As we move into this year, that was something that was really prevalent at this time that we actually did the National Staff Survey at the back end of last year. So I'm going to hand across to Carolyn to give the board the overview of the outputs of the staff survey and the actions that have been taken forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, and good to be with you all here. Thank you for inviting us along. I'm going to take you through the headlines of our staff survey and then talk to you a little bit about our planned action plan in response to these headlines. So the fieldwork period for this survey was between October and November 2024 last year. And we saw 41 colleagues complete the main survey and 15% complete the bank survey. Now, the 41% is a 1% drop on last year's completion rates, and the 15% is a 2% drop on last year's completion rates. Last year, we saw a significant improvement in questions under your managers section. Unfortunately, this year we saw that there was quite a considerable decline in all of these sections, which we suspect is related to the high level of change the organisation has been going through, but we can't just accept that as a reason. We do need to do some further work to really explore that. The things that we were pleased to see in the results were that a lot of the improvements we sustained and built upon were around health and wellbeing aspects. So we saw a reduction in physical violence experience, a reduction in unwanted sexual behaviour from colleagues, patients and service users, a general decrease in bullying and harassment across the organisation, and specifically a continuing decrease in bullying and harassment and discrimination from line managers and colleagues towards colleagues from different ethnic minority backgrounds. So although the overall results of the survey we were disappointed in, I think it's fair to say there was some sustained progress on some elements that we have been doing quite a considerable amount of work on over the last 3 to 5 years. So to give you some further headlines, we are above average for similar organisations in areas such as colleagues showing appreciation to one another, having received appraisal in the last 12 months, and making reasonable adjustments to colleagues experiencing disabilities to enable them to carry on working. We're below average for similar organisations in areas such as having adequate materials, supplies and equipment to do my work, teams working well together within the organisation, career development opportunities and advocacy questions. So questions such as recommending us as a place to work and a place to be cared for. This slide you might not be able to see in a great level of detail, but hopefully it's in your packs. This shows us against the average people promise results across the UK acute trusts. So you can see here that we are a little bit behind average. We are the dark blue line, the dark blue bar compared to the light blue bar, which is an average result. The green line is the best result for acute trusts and the yellow line is the worst result. So you can see we're sitting just behind average for most. We are slightly further behind, but we each have a voice that counts. We Are Safe and Healthy is literally 0.01% behind the average. So that's the one where we've kind of held a little bit of ground there. But the rest of them you can see we have experienced quite a drop over the last year compared to our 2023 results. So moving on to actions. Obviously, a lot of the work we need to do is centred around really understanding where people have been when they've been filling in this survey. We know since the survey happened, we've made further changes that have impacted people considerably. So really listening well is a very key priority for us. So listening well, visibility of our executive team and our leadership groups is really key. And the communications and engagement strategy is going to be a really key opportunity for us to enact this and to help us understand how we need to change, how we navigate through change in order to impact positively on our teams. We know we can't stop the changes, but we know there's things we can do a little bit differently potentially, and we can learn from how people are experiencing them to influence what we do in the future. So that's a really key strategy that's going to involve a lot more on-site presence from colleagues and listening in different spaces, getting alongside teams, and hopefully we'll be able to take the themes out of those events with our colleagues into further actions to inform how we move forward through the next year. Our divisional engagement plans are a really key support to that overall strategy. So that involves our divisional teams getting out into their new divisions, creating those relationships, understanding more about the work taking place in their teams, and really getting to know their new teams. All 3 divisional directors have started off with a welcome to the new division meeting on day 1, and that's the kind of relationship that we really want to continue with. We want people to see and know their divisional leadership teams, feel that they've got open lines of communication into them, and feel that they're understanding their work. We are working on a refreshed inclusion strategy this year because we're due to launch a new one in 2026. This is involving talking to groups of colleagues across the organisation in May. We're running focus groups, and we'll be doing targeted focus groups with other stakeholder groups throughout the summer. So that's a really key opportunity to consolidate some of the good work we've done already on it and really push further. We're really pleased to see some sustained improvement on our work to support Black and brown colleagues in our organisation. However, we're not seeing that sustained improvement for colleagues with disabilities or LGBT plus community colleagues. So that's something we really need to focus in on, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that within our new inclusion strategy. At the same time, we're also refreshing our health and wellbeing strategy. In the past, this has been a real area of strength for us in staff survey. We've seen a slight drop here, so we really need to understand what is it that people want to see and what do people need from us to help them feel that that is a priority for us again. We're also refreshing our leadership development programme this year towards a new modular leadership development programme. This will give us a little bit more agility to change the approach as different organisational needs arise. For example, leading through change is going to be a really key focus for one of our modules initially, and it helps us to embed our compassionate leadership principles and also really strengthen that we each have a voice that counts element that is so important to influencing our advocacy scores. We're continuing to strengthen our people management development programme by moving to an advanced people management development programme. This will provide in-depth guidance on processes for managers such as 2P processes, organisational change, things that they may not deal with day to day, but they do need to strengthen their abilities in. And generally, we are creating a range of resources and opportunities to improve change management capability and approach across the organisation, because we know that change is going to be a constant for us. So we know we need to really enhance the ability for managers to lead through that. Finally, we're going to be embedding our throughout the colleague journey to ensure that we're referring back to our people strategy deal in each colleague experience. And we are going to be looking at appraisal refocus to really improve the meaningful nature of that process for people, so it doesn't feel like duplication and it doesn't feel like time not well spent. We want to be assured that we've got good resources out there for managers and colleagues to use in preparing for appraisals, and really talk about increasing frequency of conversation so that we're covering topics on a more regular basis rather than just that once a year. So there's quite a range of activities there, and I'm happy to take further questions because I understand it's a bit of a canter through.
Carolyn and Natalie, thank you very much for your hard work. That was really clear. Can we just take the slides down? Is that all right? Because then we can make sure that people are wonderful. Thank you. So I'm just going to ask Karen Dean, who's the chair of the People's Committee. Briefly, Karen, is there anything you want to add to what you've heard from an assurance point of view?
No, I think that's a really strong reflection of what we heard in People Committee. So thanks again, Carolyn and Natalie, for that. I think the key thing to add is that the discussion and agreement we came to in People Committee is to really focus on the key activities that we can influence within the trust, recognising that there's a level of regional and national change, not all of which is within our direct influence. So to focus on those actions particularly, and then really to track the impact of those actions with both quantitative and qualitative evidence. That would be the key addition from People Committee.
Thank you, Karen. Can I bring the chief executive?
And thank you, Carol, and thanks, Natalie, for the work going into this. I particularly like the stance we took at the beginning was we were quick, weren't we, to think about the board's conversations this time last year, which we knew it was going to be a really difficult year. We used a lot of our platform to say this is change under our hand. It's going to feel a bit done too because we are introducing this disruption and this uncertainty. But we haven't taken that as, oh, that's of course what that is then, because we said it would happen. We're being a lot more curious and kind of connecting with teams to talk about what's really going on. So I quite like the not taking that easy first response. Of course, that was going to happen and we're getting underneath it. Really pleased to see the divisional directors, one of their first objectives is about their people focus and what they're doing in response here to build their own connections with their new teams. That will help. My question though is, we traditionally use the staff survey as our bellwether. We get it, we do the analysis, we do the deep dive. What reassurance could we take through the year around the impact of the programmes of work that we're mobilising to give some sort of view as to what we might expect when we lift the embargoed staff survey in kind of February, March next year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think the People Pulse is one measure. So that's a quarterly survey. We do struggle with low completion on that. That's something that we see quite a high variation in completion rates through the year. But it is something that all colleagues are invited to complete and that we do promote a lot more heavily since last year to try and get that connection. I think the divisional engagement events will give us a little bit of intel coming back in, and I think we're keen to do some thematic analysis on that. Also, the site visits and presence of yourselves as an exec team are going to be quite key to that. We'll also be running a series of staff survey drop-in workshops for managers and colleagues to come along and understand their own data a bit better. This is the first year we've had an interactive staff survey dashboard, so teams can get straight into their data. They don't have to wait for a divisional team to cascade the information down. And we're going to be hearing from people in those sessions about what they can do to influence and whether what we're doing is the right course of action.
Be good just to get that triangulation with Lou on the engagement and visibility work, because I think there are plenty of opportunities. It's just we probably need to be a bit disciplined as the kind of framing of the questions and the outputs we want to take from those connections, so we can build a bit of a consistent approach through. So it'd be good just to connect the two of you to see what we can do.
Yeah, sounds very exciting. That I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. I've got Scott, then Ali, and then Alice.
Just to build on, but as Adam's speaking there, so if you think of the bigger 4 or 5 projects in the change sustainability piece, those, just talking them up quickly, those will impact somewhere between 1,000 to 1,500 colleagues. And so if we do it, we'll engage with them as part of the formal kind of process of that change, but actually doing that kind of hybrid, as Adam suggests, around we'll do the engagement about the thing, but actually the kind of the cultural work around that, and how did, not what did we do, but how did we do it, and how can we kind of infuse some of the messages as part of that, because we know the areas, we know the sites, we know the people, we know it's change, we know it's difficult. So actually we could get a step ahead of it and joining those two things together.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
powerful.
Really pleased to look at that with Lou, yeah.
Thank you. Ali?
Yeah, I think the 3 other things I think would be helpful in this. So the first is that a lot of the programmes that are in here in terms of the actions will have measurable KPIs that sit alongside it. So particularly as we look to relaunch appraisal in a different way, we want to be looking at how we can measure the impact of that real time. So we're getting feedback from the experience of the appraisee during that process. So that gives us a bit of an example of each of these programmes will have measurables that sit alongside. I think for me, the key thing is that we need to embed the people strategy, the deal. And this isn't about what we will do for everybody else in the organisation. We also need to focus as much attention on what can individuals and teams do for themselves in this space. So particularly the continued rollout of the team engagement diagnostic tool and the supporting infrastructure that goes behind them, the teams owning their own engagement journey, is something that we really need to be maximising. And then the element that isn't in here but is an important component is the one of the themes within the staff survey that deteriorated was people having confidence that we would act on concerns raised by colleagues in the organisation. So the freedom to speak up triangulation process is really important here, to make sure that there is that confidence that if a concern is raised, it will be dealt with appropriately. And that might not mean that individuals get the resolution that they were looking for, but the feedback needs to be clear that the concern has been heard, listened to and acted upon appropriately.
Thank you, Alan. Alan.
Thank you. Yeah, really good to see this. And I just wondered with the reflection that I wrote it down, that team working and people's progression within the organisation had deteriorated or it was lower this year, whether that correlates with any of the exit interviews. So there's a whole raft of information there around why people leave, and we know we're not particularly good or consistent in getting that information. So I just wondered whether that might be another element to understanding how people are feeling. And there's lots of reasons why people leave, but if team working isn't good and you don't think you've got any progression, that they're two fairly major ones.
It is, yeah, and we do see that as a significant theme in our data. I don't have it at my fingertips right now,
No.
but it is absolutely something that comes up in our exit data. So that is something we really need to think about, how we are talking to people about that, how they're feeling about their future in the organisation. And I think it is, we can't be complacent, but it is a bit of a casualty of times of change and shift, that people can feel like, particularly when there are financial restrictions in place, that there is going to be that opportunity to progress on. We've had much stricter recruitment processes in place and controls around putting new roles in. And I think that is quite a shift for people that they're feeling at the moment. And I suppose it's about us exploring how else could you be developing your career. It doesn't always have to be that next role. It can be in broadening your skill set. It could be in identifying different pathways. So that's where we're really looking to strengthen those resources for managers and colleagues to be using in their appraisal process to broaden that understanding of what is career development and how are we meaningfully supporting it here.
Thank you. And the last question, last word with the chair of the People's Committee, Karen, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points for the board, just on reflection from the last few minutes conversation, and just with regard to really making a strong connection between the people services activity and the comms and engagement strategy. That was really the thinking about why we brought those two items together to the People Committee, and we'll continue to do that so we can really see that correlation and connection. And the second, that is also part of the thinking behind bringing the divisional directors and their reporting into that committee as well, so we can really understand the how of that translating into divisional activity. And along with that, one of the things that we've asked for specifically is an uptake map. So lots of tools and resources and materials are available to teams and their leaders in order to understand their data, put improvement actions in place. But what we'd really like to see is an uptake map of how that's actually spreading in reality across the organisation. And the last thing is one of the intentions behind really evidence and data-driven assurance on this is that as we move increasingly into transformation, that we really understand what of these supportive activities makes most difference, which are the ones we really need to strongly invest in going forward, and which of those potentially have less impact. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Karen. Those are some important points there in terms of the implementation going forward. So, Carolyn and Natalie, thank you for the report. Really good work. The real work begins now, because it's about how we take some of the ideas, initiatives outlined forward. But thank you for your time. We are going to, as a board of directors, asked to approve the action plan. So we're approving the action plan, and obviously the work and the progression of that will be monitored and assured through the People's Committee. So thank you, team.
Super, thank you, Chair.
See you soon. Take care. Moving swiftly on, Friday collaborative update, Chief Exec.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So a lot in this month's report, and this is a signal of changes to come. I've been talking to the Joint Committee and the Managing Director, Jonathan Wood, about making more visible and bringing to life the value and the work of the collaborative to boards. So you'll see not only an update from all of the programmes of change that the collaborative oversees, but a reflection back on the impact of those through 24-25 and what the anticipated work plan is for 25-26. So for board, then there's visibility of what to expect in terms of key decisions and updates in iterative reports. There is a clear view of decision making that will lead to effective change this year. So I'll name them so colleagues will be aware of what we've delegated authority to the Joint Committee for Oversight. So clinical transformation at a system level, you'll see vascular and orthodontics already in the pipeline for clinical change. We're expecting as fast followers urology, head and neck cancer, and some proposals around gastroenterology and stroke. The clinical transformation programme now is led by myself as the lead chief executive. I've moved from central services. Martin now picks that up as the host for ELHT. I now lead clinical reconfiguration. I've been joined by Steve Christian, who was previously the deputy chief executive at Blackpool. He's now working in the programme as the lead exec for delivery. And a gentleman called Hugo Maskey-Taylor, who you'll have seen an update from in my CEO's report. He's a very experienced, nationally and internationally recognised medical director who's going to be working in the system with the chief medical officers on building that programme of change. I would expect this side of Christmas to be talking to boards about what an acute configuration of service in our patch might look like in the future, so we can start to talk to commissioners about supporting that. So that's just to put on notice a piece of work that I think will land this year. I think it's important to note some leadership changes. So I'm delighted because of Scott picking up the Deputy Chief Executive role. Dr. Hawkswell will be our executive board member of the Pathology Board. That's currently going through his expressions of interest for hosting, and we'll build the operating model from that for board approvals as it comes through the Joint Committee. Ali will continue to be the Central Services CSESC executive lead and 1LSC representative into board for feedback. But Ali's also playing a significant leadership role in supporting the ELHT element, the hosting arrangement for 1LSC, and some advice and guidance for the whole of the 1LSC infrastructure, not just people services around transformation. So I'm delighted that Ali's taken up a broader responsibility there. We have challenged as a joint committee for the provider collaborative to cut its cloth according to the rest of the system's financial challenges. So we are already looking at a 30% reduction in the management costs and infrastructure of the collaborative in year. That's reflected in our own WRFIP as it is in the other host organisations, with a view to taking that down to a 50% but further 20% reduction next year. I'll be working with Jonathan as the managing director as to what that means in terms of reassurance that the programmes can still deliver. What it's likely to mean is our leadership teams will be leaning more into system delivery rather than buying in kind of additional resource. It is right and proper, I think, that the 5 organisations within that collaborative could service what's required of it from within. So I just wanted to draw attention to a couple of key items this month, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any points of clarification or questions for Aaron? No? Oh, Sarah.
Thank you. This, I suppose it's not a question actually, so just to note that the provider assurance committee, I can't remember exactly what its name is been stood up now. So there've been 2 meetings so far. Unfortunately, I had to miss the second one when I was ill. But I did meet with Jonathan Wood as the MD last week actually to talk about some of the things that as non-execs we're interested in. And so for example, the group saw the overviews of the different programmes of work, the pathology, orthodontics, etc. So that was really helpful. And I was sort of talking about some of the areas we are looking for assurance around, for example, QIAs and EQIAs to understand the impact for our patients and our services in our patch. And also through the audit committee, we're aware that some of our internal audit time is allocated to support 1LSC, and sort of actually just trying to understand where the assurance comes for that. And we do recognise that the boards all still have their statutory roles, but actually just thinking that through and what's the role of that provider assurance committee in that space. So it's definitely work that still needs to be developed, but I think it's helpful just to get us started with it. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Really pleased to see direction of travel at, Alan. It's good to see what's going on. So we're asked as board directors, we're asked to note the content of the report, and we'll look forward to the next one when it comes through. Moving swiftly on to item 13, this has been through workshops, board directors meetings and assurance committees, which is the BAF for 25-26. Paul.
Thanks, Tony. Probably just two items really. I'll take the report as read. I'll deal with the board assurance framework first. You can see in the report that we've given an overview of the methodology and some of the themes that have arisen as it's gone through our assurance structures. Probably just a couple of things that I want to point out. One is each of the assurance committees recognise that the new divisional structures might have an impact on delivery across each of the different domains. So that's just something I wanted to kind of draw attention to and reflect on how we might look at that during the setting up the agendas for the assurance committee going forward. Perhaps the main one that I really want to focus on though is a recommendation from the finance committee in relation to how we approach use of resources. When we did the analysis of the areas of focus, and we touched on this previously, digital featured quite largely. And when we looked at our current arrangements for reporting digital through to kind of finance committee and board, it was identified as a gap. So to address that, we're recommending that there'll be an individual digital risk under the use of resources domain. There'll be a programme of work in terms of things like digital strategy, digital governance, and I'll work with Ali around getting the detail around that. So that's kind of one area. Do you want to add to that narrative in any way, Ali?
So I guess there's also the information risk that is needing to be picked up here. So it's like I said earlier, this is a first starting point for the BAF that's been pulled together. It hasn't yet had the engagement from the from me as the exec lead or the digital leads in the organisation. So hopefully when this comes back at the next board, it'll be more fully developed.
Thank you. The second point then was a conversation with Scott in relation to an ask that emerged from the Department of Health and Social Care and colleagues in the Borough Development Initiative team about our capacity mitigations to deliver an expansion of services at Burness General Hospital. So in the light of the known risk related to capital, backlog maintenance, equipment and so on, again, we're proposing that we create a further risk specifically around that domain and activity. Again, Scott, is there anything that you particularly want to add to that now?
No, just I guess it's a two halves. So it's a positive risk, and it's rightly, I guess, when we're seeking as part of a multi-agency collaborative stewarding many hundreds of millions of pounds, then rightly the question is, does your BAF record your organisational risk for the expansion of that population? And therefore, in terms of mitigations, what are you seeking from the Barrow Rising piece of work, the Barrow Delivery Board, and nationally? So it's a kind of prospective, getting ahead of the game, positive framing of the journey we're on. But it's so important, I guess, it feels almost inconceivable it wouldn't be on our BAF.
So that's kind of the board assurance framework and kind of the significant changes that you see as we take this to our structures.
Okay, are there any points of clarification or questions before we? Okay, so we'll go to the recommendations and
Just one more quick point. So the other point, just to draw your attention to, is an amendment to the risk appetite statement that we'd agreed previously. The Finance Committee accepted a recommendation from Ali in her own cycle that we should make reference to our risk appetite in relation to cyber security. Again, anything that you want to add to that, Ali?
No, it was just an obvious gap, and just including it in the statement that's been provided, I think is sufficient.
No further plans from me, Tony.
okay, so I think if it's okay, we'll go to the recommendation. The board is asked to consider content of this report. We approve of revision to the risk appetite statements to include cyber security and 1 or 2 embellishments around digital and estates going forward as described. And secondly, approve the board assurance framework for 25-26. So with those little bits of embellishments, are we happy to approve the framework? Excellent. Thank you, team. Thank you, Paul. Item 14, Charity Corporate Trustee Committee Terms of Reference.
Thank you, Tony. There was a meeting of the Charity Committee on the 10th of April. As with all our committees, a review of terms of reference to chair business was taken. We're just asking for notification of the outcome of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any specific questions, comments? It's straightforward business. Jaliban is not here. So in his absence, can we approve those terms of reference? Thank you, colleagues. Item 15, Assurance Committee Annual Report and Effectiveness Review. If I can say it, 24-25.
We just would thought to receive the information on the outcomes of the annual report and the effectiveness reviews that have been taken by the Audit Committee, Finance Performance Committee, People Committee, and the Quality Assurance Committee.
Okay. Nicola, is there anything as chair of the committee you want to add to this?
No, I'm satisfied with it. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nicola. So unless there's any comments, they're not. So we're going to go to the recommendations. Note the contents of the Assurance Committee Annual Report for 24-25 and note the outcome of the effectiveness review of the Board Assurance Committee for 24-25. And that is that item. And now close administration. So I'm going to whip through this. Attendance monitoring register, we've noted, haven't we? So that's done. Number 17, schedule of business, we've noted and it's attached for your information. Company secretary, is there any urgent business?
I've not been alerted to anything.
Karen, apologies, I've just been alerted your hands up.
No, sorry, and apologies, Chair. I'm just coming in late with something. It's just a relatively small thing. Just noting that the key areas of focus on the Bath report, I think, aren't consistent with the key areas of focus in the 25-26 plan, which I know that needs to be formally signed off, but I think it's just really important that they're consistent and mirror one another. So I think just an update would be really helpful. Thank you. Sorry to be late with that.
Oh, don't apologise. It's important.
We'll double check that, Karen, make sure they're consistent. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have no urgent business. Date and time of next meeting is the 2nd of July 2025 at 9 AM. Andrew will be sat in his chair, so good luck to Andrew in the process. And now we're going to have a break, I think, before private board. Is that the one? Yes. So we've got 56 minutes, as much as that, to get your food and relax. Well, I mean, thank you, everyone. Speak to you soon. 1 o'clock.